I'm just going to welcome our first two speakers. We have Lucy Lambe, the Open Research Librarian at LSE Library, and Jason Hazard, who is a CIVICA Library Coordinator at Sciences Po in Paris. And they're going to talk about their Training the Trainer, a program that's empowering librarians across the CIVICA Alliance in fostering open research communities. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. So yes, we created a training program. So starting an open research community at LSE and beyond. So we are a group of 10 universities in CIVICA. It's a European social science organization that brings together the 10 leading higher education institutions in social sciences, humanities, business management, and public policy. We have more than 72,000 students, 13,000 staff who are involved with this. Some of those members of CIVICA are Bocconi University, based in Italy, Central European University in Austria, European University Institute in Italy, Heritage School in Germany, IE University in Spain, the National University of Political Studies and Administration in Romania, Sciences Po, which is where I'm based, in France, SGH, Warsaw School of Economics in Poland, Stockholm School of Economics in Sweden, and London School of Economics here in the United Kingdom. So the goal of CIVICA is to find solutions to complex issues and societal changes, and we have in 2019, the European Commission selected CIVICA as a pilot European university initiative, and it was confirmed in 2022 as a successful alliance under Erasmus Plus program. And so that's how we started this program of having an open science. It was a part of our work package, so I'm going to begin talking about that. So the Open Science Initiative initial phase, it began in January of 2021, and it concluded in December of 2023. So some of the things that was involved in that was to develop a open science plans and principles across the CIVICA network. And some of the key achievements were a collaborative working group was launched, an open science barometer was created to assess institutional policies, infrastructure, and training, action plan based on open access, fair data, and citizen science, and in alignment with the European Commission science principles. Some training initiatives, so webinars featuring early career researchers, training programs were introduced, and policy infrastructure were strengthened within the barometers that were taken during that time. So now I'm going to move on to where we are in this version of CIVICA. We are in CIVICA 2. And so in CIVICA 2, our key goals were to integrate open science activities in CIVICA 2, build research, focus CIVICA open research community, ensure continuity of CIVICA research, which is a part of work package 4 of the larger CIVICA structure, and to tailor open science to social sciences needs, and to raise the profile of European infrastructure opportunities, so example, the Horizon Europe 2025. So expanding open science within CIVICA, so an amendment was introduced and given to the European Commission to formally include open science into the work package for the libraries. The initiative was to establish the open science communities, which is what we were, Lucy and I were tasked with creating, the training program, and to support structure, creation of coordinating group and sharing knowledges across our institutions. And so the open science, we have a coordinating committee. So it's made up of 3 members per institution. We have at least a researcher, a professional service member, so a librarian or a data steward. And the focus was on having a diverse group of people in various stages of their career. And kind of our function was to of the coordinating committee is to have coordination and regular experiences of sharing and meetings across the CIVICA, at the CIVICA level. So our open science communities, so we have open science communities at each CIVICA institution, and those included informal chats, webinars, events, so on fair data, reproducibility, and online cross-institutional institutional events. So here's our timeline. So this started, it actually even started well before November. We've been talking about this for forever, it seems like. But kind of where we are now, in November, our first coordinating committee was established. And in January and March was our was our first, I guess, training session started during that time period. And so Lucy, myself, and another colleague from LSC did the sessions each week, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. In April, actually not next week, but maybe the week after, we have our next steering committee meeting to share what we've talked about, and we'll probably actually talk again, use this same presentation that we're doing again to the committee. And by June, we hope to launch our first local CIVICA OSCs. So we were inspired by the NOSC model, so the International Network of Open Science and Scholarship Communities, the inspiration for our CIVICA OSCs. And it was, again, we had to tailor it to social sciences because we are social sciences universities, and to support knowledge and exchange with peer learning and sustainability in our OSCs. So our training program, our training outline and overview over the 6 weeks was to build and sustain OSCs within CIVICA, so weekly thematic sessions, a mix of practical work, discussions, and strategy, and focus on sustainability and engagement. So let's see, so this is our training outline. So week 1 was our introduction and welcome of all of our participants. So our goals that week were to understand the OSC model, review the UNESCO Open Science recommendations, and reflect on the open science landscape. And our activities were to define the vision and the mission of what we were doing. In week 2, our theme was to prepare and launch your OSC. So we identified early adopters. We also aligned talking about aligning our national policies across, because we are so many different universities in different countries, and to plan community launch and website events, and drafting a community engagement plan. In week 3, we talked about growing the communities, so recruitment strategies, fostering sustained participation, and designing a communication strategy. And then continuing in week 4, using the community, knowledge sharing and advocacy, institutional stakeholders engagement, and identifying key stakeholders, institutional stakeholders. And in week 5, we talked about sustaining the community. So thinking about our focus areas were diversity, equity, and inclusion, long-term funding strategies, and our activities were identifying funding opportunities and drafting plans going forward. And finally, our week 6 which ended not too long ago, so was our wrap-up and summary, so reflecting on the program, discussing future involvement, and kind of the next steps. And we also invited someone from, I believe, Amsterdam University, to speak to our group and to talk about open science and how they were doing open science in the Netherlands and specifically at Amsterdam University. So I think I hand it over to you now. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Lucy, and she's going to talk about kind of our first reactions with open science, our open science communities.
Thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. Hang on. So first reactions and expectations. Firstly, we were really pleased that everybody turned up because we know how stretched everyone is for time. But even more so because after the first meeting, we had a few requests to add additional colleagues to our team site and to the rest of the programme to join us. So each institution nominated one person to take part in the programme. But in a few cases, word spread about how great it was, and their colleagues asked to also attend. So we took this as a vote of confidence, and the more the merrier, more people joined the 6-week programme. We asked participants about what they were expecting to make sure that what we were planning would meet those expectations. And it was really encouraging to hear that they all had similar expectations. And these involved learning how to build communities, how to engage members in open science. And we spent some time at the beginning establishing the objectives for the programme and talked about how these might be different to the objectives for their own open science community. So there's objectives for the 6-week programme, but they're also expected to set their own objectives as part of their master plan, which came from the INOSC materials that we used. So we had some discussions each week after the formal presentations, and we talked about the content of the presentation and how these might apply to our own institutions. And we shared activities that we had tried or were planning to try. So some of the emerging themes from those discussions are described here. Firstly, there's a lack of incentives when it comes to advocating for open science practices. Many of our so-called early adopters are doing open science because they want to, or a funder requires it, or in some cases they just enjoy the technical side. We recognise that open science takes time, and many researchers just aren't being rewarded for spending the time on open science. So unless it's something they already have a particular interest in, there's not much motivating them to get involved aside from funder mandates. There are also mixed messages that researchers are getting. So your institution might have a policy, your funder might have a policy, and at the same time you're hearing different messages from colleagues about what you should or shouldn't be spending your time on. And especially for PhD students, the influence that their supervisor has on their opinion around open science is really important and influential. So the idea of the community model, of course, is bringing all of those views together and trying to find some common ground or a path forward. We talked about the need to start small and to trust that the snowball will run down the hill and get bigger and bigger. And for many of the participants, starting small was actually the only option because of the size of their institution or the staff capacity that was available. So because of limited capacity, many institutions were targeting their efforts to specific groups, especially PhDs and early career researchers. But we recognise that the early adopters are actually often more senior academics who can be more flexible in how they spend their time. And again, the community model would ideally bring these two groups together and everyone in between. And finally, we talked about the skills and capacity building and how important it is for staff to make time to develop their own open science knowledge as well as develop the communities in their institutions. And community building in itself is a skill, and it can be hard to do if you're new to it. Results and feedback. So overall, the feedback was really positive, but because of the size of the numbers, I don't really have any data to show you, so I've just given us 5 stars. In general, the participants identified week 3 on growing the community as the most useful session, which perhaps speaks to where we were as a collective group. We all kind of know some of the usual suspects in our institutions who are, pro open science, but we all need a bit of help to build on that and find the people that we don't know about yet. And they all really enjoyed the final week, which Jason mentioned was a presentation and Q&A with Raoul Inzerold from Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and he's also a member of the INOSC board. So it was really useful to hear about his real-world experience as a kind of community manager in a university. And he's really positive and enthusiastic about all the challenges of community building. So it was quite inspiring for our participants. From the feedback during and after the programme, there was strong support for the creation of a CIVICA open science community, so starting with the incubator participants and our coordinating committee as well. For almost everyone in the programme, Community building was something new, and this is for me as well, and not really part of the day-to-day work that we're doing. So a community of practice where we can support each other, share ideas for community building, and advocate for open social sciences is going to be really important as we move forward. So at the same time as we were doing this, my team was busy within LSE building our own open science community. We've had a core open research working group formed since last summer, which includes academic and research support staff, and they've helped to direct and prioritise some of our activities. So far, we've hosted 4 panel discussions on a range of topics, including opening research on marginalised communities, publishing beyond academia, and a panel discussion on how journal editors can influence scholarly communications. And these events are not intended to be training, but are designed to be academic-led and consider how open science could work for the social sciences and explore what the barriers might be. We also have a series of workshops planned for PhD students and postdocs, developed by Tom Graves from the Open Research team, which will have participants learn about open research, but also then collaboratively develop their own workflows that serve their own discipline and methodologies. And in the last couple of months, we've launched a newsletter and a LinkedIn network to provide more informal ways for people to join in and keep up to date. We'll have an official launch event in May, and we're going to be hosting some events as part of a shared Open Research Week with UCL and the Francis Crick Institute in June. Some of the challenges we met. There was CIVICA, we have a lot in common, but there's also a wide range of the types of institutions that are in the Alliance. So there are differences between our institutions, the libraries and national contexts. We have 10 institutions from the Hertie School in Berlin, which has just 146 academic staff, and 4 library staff, all the way to Sciences Po in Paris, which has over 5,000 academic staff. And despite having a major shared research funder in the European Commission, there are still differences in national research policies, some of which have a clear emphasis on research publications in high-impact journals, with almost no mention of open access or data sharing. This meant it was really important to clearly articulate the shared objectives in the project and to manage the expectations of what we would achieve in the short term. We reminded participants that our goal was to create a community, and that would mean finding those individual people who are early adopters, starting the conversation and building from there, and that we don't have to do everything ourselves, but at the beginning to be facilitators and join up what's already happening. We've all faced some skepticism or indifference from researchers, like planning training sessions that no one turns up to, and the incubator program was a really great space to share those challenges. But we also tried to think about ways to overcome these together. For example, we talked about how we might use some of the perceived failures of open access as an example of how we might do things differently in the rest of open science, and therefore why it's important that researchers are involved in this movement. The dominance of commercial players has meant that transition to open access publishing has been slow, expensive, and further exacerbated the issue of equity in scholarly communications. And everyone recognised that mandates or mandates alone are not the way to increase engagement. Again, the community model is a bottom-up approach that gives a wider range of stakeholders the opportunity to give feedback and have a say in what works for their research. And finally, I mentioned the additional participants that joined us in after week 1. It was really important to remind everyone that someone needed to take ownership. So just in case there was a risk of people thinking, well, so-and-so will do this because they've joined and I don't need to do whatever I'm responsible for. What's next? Now it's over to each institution to start their open science communities using the information that they got from the programme and their own master plans. We will arrange a follow-up meeting so everyone can report on their progress, and this will likely happen over the summer. We're going to build on this to ensure the CIVICA open science community continues to grow, and we've recently been in contact with another EU University Alliance who have a similar open science community model. So this provides yet another opportunity to expand our community and learn from other institutions. And again, our long-term ambition is to act together and have a louder voice to advocate for the social sciences in open science discussions and policies going forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you both very much. I'm particularly inspired by your 5-star self-assessment methodology, which I think we might be using for this conference. We're now going to turn to Leeds. We have Claire Knowles, who's the Associate Director of Research and Digital Futures at the University of Leeds, and Simon Popple, who's the Academic Lead for Digital Creativity and Culture Hub, and Senior Lecturer in Photography, Digital and Digital Culture. Sorry, that was two job descriptions, which I think I mangled both of them. Apologies, but they're going to present on the really interesting digital creativity and culture hub that's being set up in Leeds. So, over to you.
Thank you all. And Simon and I decided to be slightly different and standing up together, so please bear with us, and if you can't hear us, just let us know as we shuffle around the stage. So we're going to be talking about the work that we've been doing at Leeds with Digital Creativity and Cultures Hub, or the DCCH as we call it, because we all love an acronym, don't we, in libraries. So the DCCH is part of supporting our library vision, which for those of you who were in the same room earlier, Masu talked of, Knowledge for All, the vision for 2030 at the University of Leeds. And strategic priority 3, I keep worrying that this is going to be our Christmas quiz, is remembering all the strategic priorities, is meaningful and sustainable. And this very much links back to what Christopher Smith was saying at the starting keynote. Sustainable, how do we keep things going? Partnerships, and that being an equal partnership, not the library supporting academics, but a partnership going forwards. We already have lots of use of our collections, but how do we create a partnership between the faculty and the library, and the intersection with collections, digital humanities and digital scholarship? And we're going to focus on the digital today, but it's becoming more than just the digital, what we're doing, and we'll touch on that at the end. Simon.
Thank you, Claire. Great. Thanks. Yeah, I'm the academic lead for the DCCH, as Claire said, and I've been in post 18 months, so we're a relatively new organisation. And we are a joint initiative between the library and between the Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Cultures and the Leeds Arts and Humanities Research Institute. And we serve a number of functions, really. We physically sit within the library, which is hugely beneficial for us because the library is the common space on campus that all our colleagues, all our students come into or are meant to come into at certain points in their careers. So it's a great place for convening conversations, for convening communities, and really convening people who are interested in working with university cultural collections, or using digital approaches and digital methods in research. And one thing that I'm always at pains to say is that we're not a digital humanities centre. We are, I suppose, a sort of DH plus centre. We serve the sort of standard approaches to digital methods that come from digital humanities. But we also support research using digital infrastructures. We support colleagues who want to build digital resources. So, for example, people who are wanting to build websites or to build databases that come out of funded research projects. We house and support the Digital Humanities Group within the university, so they sit within our purview. And there's a very active community at Leeds. And as with any large organisation, one of the other things that I spend an inordinate amount of time doing is pointing at people, trying to get them to talk to each other, making things visible. So visibility and signposting is also a really big part of what we do. We do standard training around digital methods. We offer research consultations, so we support research applications and often write the sort of digital elements of applications for colleagues. We liaise with library staff who are brilliant at helping us think about data and ethics and all the things that academics spend a lot of time not worrying about sometimes, so they're more focused on their research questions, so we try and steer them that way. And above all, we try and sort of convene conversations. We try and get people to work and talk together. And over the sort of past 18 months and beyond, really, I've been at Leeds 20 years this year, so it's an institution that I know extremely well. We also support the digital transformation project that the university is undergoing at the moment, and things that are related to that in terms of library development. So the Digital Library Infrastructure Project is one of the core projects, and I think Claire's going to talk about that in a minute, that we support both in terms of our staff, but also in terms of helping to support events and workshops. We have built a really successful student internship scheme that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes' time and give you some examples of the amazing work that students have been doing and the insights that they bring to us. And they allow us to see things that we can't see because we're too institutionalised. We are starting to work on developing research grants and thinking about bringing research funding into the library as well. That's something that I'm very passionate about. We've also started to develop big international networks. So we're involved in the development of the UK Ireland Digital Humanities Association at the moment, which launches next year. We're also a participating member of DARIA, which is the European infrastructure for digital humanities. Unfortunately, the UK isn't allowed to join because of Brexit, but we're doing our best to get in by the back door at the moment. And we're also talking about developing some fellowships, if we're allowed to call them fellowships. I think Masood alluded to this earlier on today. So I'll hand back to Claire now, and she's going to continue.
So as Simon says, one of the areas we collaborate is on a big institutional digital transformation project, and this is university funded, the Digital Library Infrastructure Project, or DLIP. I said we like the acronyms. And this is all about our cultural collections and how we make them accessible, discoverable and usable. And that's not only refreshing our website, but making them to be able to be used by Simon and his colleagues, be they students or staff, for digital methods. So we're working very closely on this and how we build it together. A core principle of this, and I have to thank Joanne at the end of the stage, because when we came up with these principles was when she was still at Leeds, was that what we're building has to be user-friendly and intuitive. We're building this for our users, so we need to make sure, what do they want to do with our stuff? And it's very much, even though we've got lots of users, the users of our collections are around the world, we're focusing initially on our local users. So that's our students, our staff, our local communities. And part of what that is how we find out from them what we want to do when we don't carry the assumptions of what we've built over time in the last 20 or so years since we first created our website and put things up. So it's kind of, we don't want to throw everything out, but we need to say, why do we do this? What goes first? How does that work? And Simon and his team have been great at getting us into the right conversations, having these workshops and making sure that they're user-focused, not tech-focused, which is often where we come from, and not metadata-focused. It's what do our users want, and then the technology and the metadata enable that. So we've been doing a number of sessions, and we've got more underway, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what they've been. So I think I need stronger glasses. So part of it is, what do the users want to do, and how do they want to find things? And that's particularly, we've seen a theme throughout the last 3 days, haven't we, around AI and how that's changing discovery and how that's changing search. What sort of research questions are people wanting to ask, knowing that they no longer have to go in and just put a couple of keywords because they can be more conversational. So what do our users want to ask? What are the sort of questions that they're coming forward with, rather than what are the things that they would put in that Google-type search box that we've been talking about for the last 20 years. And when they see the content come through, be that search results or an item, what do they want to see there? What's that contextual information? And how do we pull that together in a way that we can do now, that we can pull more content together? Where do they want to link to? And we're adopting a linked open data model. So what are those links they want to see? How do we use authorities and terms to bring things through? Where do they want to link out? Where do they want us to pull in? And what do they expect to see? What images? Do they want all the images? Do they want conservation images? Which ones do they want to see first? How do they want to do search within an item, etc.? So this has been really key for us. And Cassie, in Simon's team, and Karen in the library have been co-leading this work and making sure we're going forward and getting input. So yeah, these are more photos from around campus of people coming together. And another thing we've been doing is a core technology and open standard for DLIP is IIIF, the International Image Interoperability Framework. I have to make sure I get those I's in the right order, which is also not just images anymore, it's AV, and it will be 3D soon as well. So because this is a core technology and enables people to do things with our collections they haven't been able to do before, we've already started the training. So we're not quite there with IIIF yet. Fingers crossed we will be with all our images soon, but they've already started training because IIIF isn't just what we have at Leeds, it's what I see many people around the room, British Library, Cambridge, John over there from Princeton, who's using IIIF, and they can use that content already. And one of the aims with IIIF is to bring content together. So even though we're still on our journey, it's still an important thing for us to enable our users to use those other collections. They don't just use our collections in Leeds. So we've had training sessions, we've done teaching, because we want to make sure that these technologies we're using are embedded in our teaching as well. So we've been working really closely with UCLA, who've been getting IIIF into teaching, and also created a module in Minerva, which is our version of Blackboard at Leeds. So lots of that happening there, and it's great the support we're getting from the DCCH, that we do this in collaboration. So we're using the terminology, we're in the networks that our academics are using. And we're also, plug here, we're hosting the IIIF conference in June in Leeds. So that's very much coordinating and running that together to make sure we get the users of our content at the conference, because this is a conference not only for those who enable IIIF to be used with our images and collections, but also those who use those content.
Great, thanks. And one of the things that I'm most proud of that we've achieved in the past 18 months is actually a series of internships that we've developed in conjunction with the library, based around library collections. We were ostensibly focused on supporting staff and postgraduate researchers within the university because of our current size, but as somebody who's taught for 20 odd years, I'm also really concerned with also trying to use the insights that students can give us about the way in which we work, about questions about research, around ethics, and around equity, and how we can bring those into dialogue with the collections that we have. So we basically received funding for a first round of internships. This was jointly funded very kindly by the library and by the university's alumni society. And we recruited 10 undergraduate students. And I was very keen that we recruited across the university. Ostensibly, we're funded again to support largely arts and humanities colleagues, but increasingly we're working in very interdisciplinary ways across the whole university. And so we consciously recruited from arts and humanities, but also from robotics, mechanical engineering, and computing. And we paired students together to work on a project, because I was very interested in terms of what transferable skills might appear, what innovative ways that people would develop to engage with elements of collections. And interestingly, thinking about what the consequences might be when we showed this to our colleagues to say, look, the students are doing this amazing work, they're working together across disciplinary boundaries. Wouldn't it be great if you started to think more about this as well in your own practices? So we gave students 140 hours, which seemed a long time. It was basically and effectively a day a week for the entire academic year to work on projects. And we also gave them a £500 bursary for training and to go to conferences. And we were really keen to think about what the priorities of certain elements of library collections were, where there were things that were at certain states of development where we wanted to do a bit more work but there wasn't capacity, where we thought there was potential for students to bring new insights and new ideas. And we, over the course of the year, mentored 5 projects with, say, 2 students on each project. Also, really importantly, we included university colleagues in the mentorship team. So each group had 2 mentors, one from DCCH, basically me and Cassie, but then also library colleagues who also gave their expertise and their insights to the projects as well. And it was really interesting working with them, thinking about coming from different perspectives. Mine is an academic background. I'm not library trained in that sense. So I learnt an awful lot about how libraries work as well as through the process. And I'm going to say a little bit about each of the projects. So this is our first cohort. And the first thing that I really wanted to say was that they had amazing insights into the things that we've been talking about today, particularly around ethics, around the extractive nature of AI, around the biases in AI systems. And they very much adopted an approach of digital good, the sense that they would use these tools in their research, but they had to have positive outcomes. They weren't just there to be used for the sake of being used. So lots of the conversations that we had was around the outcomes that they wanted to develop from the projects they were making and how they wanted to embed these in wider practices. So I'm very quickly just going to give you a flavour of the 5 projects. But they're all on our website, and there's links in the slides where you can actually look. And the students have been recording podcasts and writing blogs about their experiences as well. So the first project, on which I mentored, was called Welcoming Migrants. It was picking up an initiative that the university is developing about being an open campus, about welcoming people onto campus to use the library resources, to use library galleries, and also to use a whole range of other services. And these 2 students worked with mapping technologies to think about creating accessible maps that would not only signpost what's available on the university campus, but also what's more available in terms of support in the broader city region as well. And they were also evaluating different types of mapping technologies. And at the moment, we're just doing an evaluation on this before we're hoping to launch the map and develop it further. The second project, again, was another one that I was mentoring, was working with Raspberry Pi Foundation, developing coding resources for coding clubs in Bradford, and working with an organisation called Born in Bradford, which is doing a longitudinal study on child health and welfare in the city. And so this was really about developing resources and developing training materials for children in those areas in Bradford. The third project was looking at an element of a new collection, really, that had come into special collections, the John Bedford Antiques collection, and it was around developing and building 3D models and 3D visualizations of furniture that was described in catalogues and in trade cards. And so it was a way of visualizing and making sort of a sense of tangibility out of a series of illustrations and descriptions. And again, it was a really interesting way in which they were thinking about 3D design models and the affordances of 3D technology. The fourth project was looking at collections as data. So these were 2 students who were particularly interested in cultural heritage data. And they produced a series of things. Most people had one project when they started and then ended up doing 3 or 4 because they got so engaged. And some of them are still working on their projects, even though they've graduated and gone, but they're still here, virtually working on these projects. One of the projects was looking at the university's collections of cookery books and using a range of AI techniques to produce an animated version of a cookbook. So they were looking at transcription from original text and handwriting, translating that into a cookbook that you can then click back through the recipes to the original sources. They used generative AI to create the illustrations for the cookbook. And it's got some of the most weird and wonderful things you've ever heard of in. So don't look at it if you're feeling hungry, because certain things in there you really wouldn't want to eat. But it's really fascinating cookbook, and there are links in there for you to have a look. They also looked at using large language models for analysing images that were in university collections that weren't ascribed, so orphan images, where they were training the tool that we were using, Lava, to identify locations in historic photographs. And then finally, the project was looking at supporting the AAAF initiative, working very closely with Claire and her colleagues. And this produced about 6 different projects, and they're still working on some of these already. But the 2 core ones that I thought I'd just show you quickly was one was an app to sonify textile patterns for people with visual impairment. So they were thinking about how do you make collections accessible to people and issues around accessibility. So they built a prototype app, which they're just about to launch, that sonifies textile patterns. They also were working with the coin collection, thinking about certain collections that are difficult to open up and make attractive as well. And they built a 3D coin scanner that can deal with reflective surfaces out of a biscuit tin. And it works, and so we're using it now to scan some of the coin collections. We've got a blog page with the students talking about these projects themselves, so if you want to hear their words, not mine, have a look on there and you'll find out more about the projects on there. Very briefly, we're now reflecting on the internships, thinking about how we'll do things slightly differently next time. The sort of key takeaway was, from organisational point of view, was that we perhaps need to give students a bit more guidance on the projects. We gave them completely free rein, and some groups took longer than others to settle into a project. But the student feedback was brilliant. We've got really good feedback about employability options, and we've got students changing careers. So we've got an English student who's now applying to do an MSc. So over to you, Claire.
So future activities, so more of the same. We want to keep doing what we're doing. We're looking at fellowships, as we said, if we can call them fellows, or research officers, hackathons and promptathons, which is something we're looking at doing more widely in the library, but how do we bring them in and use the DCCH space? Research projects as well, we really want to build on that alongside the work that Simon's doing with other colleagues. And as Masood mentioned earlier, we're also going to be hosting the Library Knowledge Futures Symposium on the 27th of June. So please look out for the invite for that. And yeah, this is a great way of working together. And as I said at the beginning, it's making it sustainable and a partnership. And I think it's very much been fed from our vision, but also the work that RLUK have done with AHRC. So thank you for that report, which helps take this work forward. And then I can see I'm red, so there are some links. Thank you very much. Please do get in touch.
Thank you both so much. A huge amount of work there. I've learned a new word, a promptathon. So that's my takeaway. And I was very pleased to hear about the UK Ireland Digital Humanities Association work, because our colleague Christina she's been working on that for RLUK. So that's fabulous. So to our last presentation of the conference, and we're coming home to Liverpool. We have Matt Greenhall and Joanne Fitton, who are respectively the Director and Deputy Director of Libraries, Museums and Galleries here at the University of Liverpool. Those of us who went to the dinner last night know just how wonderful the museum is, the Victoria Museum, but I'm sure we're going to hear about how wonderful all of the range of activities are. So over to you, Matt and Joanne.
Thanks very much, David. Conference speakers sometimes joke that they're standing between their audience's conference lunch or conference coffee. Joanne and I are standing between you and your weekend. So we're going to be, this is going to be high octane and timely. So I'm Matt Greenhall, I'm Director of Libraries, Museums and Galleries, and I'll be doing the first half, and then I'll hand over to Joanne Fitton, who's Deputy Director. Although Joanne and I are speaking, the work that we'll be presenting is work of many colleagues across libraries, museums and galleries, including some of our colleagues in the room as well. So this really is a collective effort. So we're going to be talking through the journey that we have been going on in the last 2 years to reimagine libraries, museums and galleries as research partners and research leaders. And in particular, we're going to talk through 4 things. We're going to talk about our role as research infrastructure and some of our experiences in the last 2 years around deploying some quite rapid investments in our research infrastructure, particularly around digital heritage and digital scholarship. Secondly, we're going to talk a bit about repositioning our libraries within the institution as more visible research partners. We've got a strong record as research supporters, but our role as research partners within the institution. Thirdly, our role as research leaders, actually attracting funding and leading research in our own rights, before then our growing role as research communicators through the co-curation of exhibitions and galleries to communicate research to a wider audience. And any of you who came to the VGM last night will have seen and heard about some of our work in this area. Now, these 4 responsibilities, these 4 roles will be familiar to many of your institutions. I think all of us have a flavour or an element of some of these things within our work. And it's true that Liverpool for a long time has had elements of these 4 roles within the work we've been doing. But it's fair to say that maybe they haven't always been brought together coherently within a strategic framework or received the recognition that they might have done within the institution. They haven't necessarily been seen and recognised by faculty or wider professional services. And that within Liverpool, we've been going through a period of really rapid change, and this has provided the circumstances and the opportunity to reimagine ourselves and present ourselves within the institution as research partners and leaders in quite an unusual way, and we'll touch on this in a moment.
And then finally, and just alluding back to what Claire referenced a moment ago, we're aware that there's a huge amount of sector experience and sector knowledge, not least in some of the work that RLUK has been doing with the AHRC, to really interrogate what is the role, what is the possibility of research libraries as partners and leaders in research. So this possibility to raise our visibility, the changes that we're seeing within the institution, which I'll talk about in a moment, and this wider sector understanding and the advocacy of the AHRC have come together almost in a bit of planetary alignment to enable us to make some progress really, really quickly. And it's also provided a really fertile environment for us to test some of the recommendations that the AHRC and RLUK made in some of the reports and works that's been done in this space. Now, so far, this all sounds glorious, but this has been very quick. It's sometimes been a bit messy. So we're going to share some of our honest experiences as well and some of the lessons we've learnt along the way. So firstly, a bit of an introduction. So very quickly, for those unfamiliar with Liverpool, we are a multi-site. We are libraries, museums and galleries. That's both our name but also our ingredients. We have 3 university libraries, 2 museums and also galleries. And like many of your institutions, our libraries in particular are wildly popular. They're incredibly busy. They're some of the most densely populated spaces on campus. This year we're expecting around 2 million student visits to our 2 campus libraries. They are heaving and hugely popular, which we're very proud of. And we have very, very varied and diverse collections, both within our museums and also our libraries. And we've got the 2 museums, one of which you saw last night, and also an archaeology museum, the Garstang Museum of Archaeology. Not only is this a great diversity of collection, but also of audience. And this is one of the things that we've really been positioning ourselves around within the university in the last 2 years, that we, as a department, are relatively unique, not completely, but relatively unique in having such an obvious cross-audience function, that we have such a strong student engagement, yet then have a really close relationship with our researchers, a public offer, and a global visibility in terms of our partnerships. We're covering all of the university's core audiences in a really obvious way. So we see this as a real strength around our role as research partners. And that these audiences are changing and evolving, and the institution around us has also gone through a period of huge change in the last few years, with a new university vice-chancellor, new deputy vice-chancellor, new chief operating officer, new PVC Global, and also Joanne and I joining libraries, museums and galleries. So there's been a big change in terms of institutional leadership. And this has brought new strategic opportunities with a new university strategy. All of this provided us an opportunity to pause when we arrived and go through a process of what we called reflect and reset. To stop briefly and think about what has the pandemic taught us about some of our services and some of our collections and our role within the institution? How has it challenged some of our assumptions? How has it confirmed some of our assumptions? What opportunities are there with a changing institutional focus around us and changing leadership to reposition some of our narrative? And what are some of those wider sector changes that we can take advantage of as well? And the end result of this process is what we referred to last night and what I mentioned in my opening remarks at the conference reception is our library, museums and galleries strategic plan, reimagining libraries, museums and galleries. And this really outlines our key role within the institution, our vision as a department, and our mission as well within the institution. And this is really the outcome of this reflect and reset process. And some of the things that were highlighted through this was that as a department, we've been known for some time as a research supporter, but not so much as a research partner. We've never attracted external research funding. We've never had funding from the AHRC. We've seen many opportunities that had passed us by, such as CAPCO and other initiatives which some other research libraries had taken advantage of. We were highly valued and highly visible around student experience. And there was a huge amount of appreciation around our work in relation to open research. But there wasn't so much of a recognition around our role in research partnership. So what we undertook over the last 2 years is speaking very widely with libraries, museums and galleries colleagues, speaking across faculty and departments, and also with external stakeholders. And what this process revealed was that in Liverpool, we have traditionally had a lot of external dependency in terms of some of our research infrastructure around digital scholarship and digital humanities. We've done really interesting and valuable research in this area, but we haven't been able to support this from within libraries, museums and galleries because we didn't have the capability, we didn't have the capacity, and we didn't have the infrastructure. That with the new Vice-Chancellor's arrival, there were huge institutional ambitions to raise our research profile, to enter the World Top 100 as an institution, and that libraries, museums and galleries had a real opportunity to play to support this mission as research partners and research leaders. And that as we were talking to colleagues across faculty and departments, there was actually a huge degree of enthusiasm and goodwill for the idea of libraries, museums and galleries as research partners and leaders to support this mission more widely. So in terms of what we're going to talk about now, this was the sort of positioning that we made with all this change going across the institution. An example that we're going to focus on is the area that we identified quickly as a key focus and priority, and that was around our digital infrastructure and our ability to support digital scholarship. And we set out our ambitions that we wanted to drive an ambitious digital shift, using some RLUK terminology there, in LMG's capabilities, collections, and collaborative abilities as providers, partners, and leaders in relation to research. And what this ambition recognised is that we have amazing collections, really, really fantastic, but they were overwhelmingly analogue. We hadn't undertaken much digitisation. We didn't have an ability to digitise collections ourselves or preserve them digitally or present them digitally. But that instead of this being a weakness or a challenge, what this provided us with was a clean slate digital foundation, a really rare opportunity where an institution has large collections, really great ambitions in terms of research development, but doesn't have the infrastructure in place to do that. So we have no legacy systems, we don't have to re-digitise anything, we have a clean digital slate. And this was effectively our vision that we provided with the institution in order to attract additional investment. And Joanne's now going to talk through some of the mechanics and how we manage that at great speed. So over to you, Joanne. That was the process of great speed. Joanne, you've got plenty of time. Keep going. No one's got a train to catch.
No pressure, thank you. Okay. So, you'll see from this, well, over the last 2 years, we've received about 1.5 million when you add it up. It's not been one big bang. That might have been an easier way to go about things. But really, as Matt said, this has been about building relationships with faculty, understanding the agenda of others, and being opportunistic for both pay and non-pay resource. And we've used quality research funding, research culture, some core resources come our way, and IT has had strategic investment that they needed to spend quickly on proof of concepts, and we told them that we could help. So our approach has been focused on our strategy and our capabilities, that low baseline that Matt has mentioned. And heritage, cultural heritage and digital have not traditionally been prioritised at Liverpool. So how do we build both technical and curatorial capabilities? We used our QR funding to build a digitisation studio as core research infrastructure to be run within the libraries, and we realigned existing roles to support it as well. In terms of our collections, they're very diverse in format and in subject, but we wanted to really bridge between our own collections and those of others with ease, and to make them research ready, but also enable storytelling for more hidden voices and to be able to have co-production with our collections. So this meant rapid deployment of a number of software services. Feels like there's a lot of product placement there. What we needed to do to make progress quickly was to use infrastructure that was out there and readily available. So, yeah, my glasses aren't good enough either, Claire. We have worked with AM Digital with their Cortex platform, CIVICA to get some preservation infrastructure. We are working with Axial for using Axial collections and HuMap as well. And what we've been really trying to do is get a critical mass of material online quickly to show that return on investment for the university. We've also been thinking about collaboration a lot. We've used research culture funding as well as sort of that proof of concept and core resource to build a makerspace in the library. And we're really demonstrating the different uses and relationships between analogue, digital and reproductions of our collections through this. And the makerspace is an opportunity for students to experiment and fail safe. And it's also an opportunity for researchers and academic colleagues to start to diversify their skills and experiences as well. So the setting up of these facilities has opened up new conversations, diversified our stakeholder engagement and brought new community relationships to us as a library. Moving on to research leadership. Again, focusing with our quality research funding, we wanted to create collections quickly, as I've said. So we quickly digitised glass plates in the Garstang collection, our Garstang Museum of Egyptology and Archaeology. And the AM Digital platform gave us digital capabilities that were very new to us. We could use transcription tools. We had IIIF capabilities immediately. We could present our collections as a research resource. And we've been able to experiment with storytelling and visualizations of data, and we're playing with georeferencing, geotagging of collections using the HuMap platform as well. So I'll keep going back to relationships. We're being asked to participate now with researchers as partners in their projects, and our skill sets being recognised, and the infrastructure that we can offer to our academic community as well. But the biggest focus has been the AHRC Riches programme. So Matt mentioned CAPCO, and we hadn't been ready for that kind of investment at Liverpool. But Riches was the next scheme to come along, and we wanted to be in that game. So for those who might not know, Riches, it stands for Research Infrastructure for Conservation and Heritage Science. And it's the really huge infrastructure project by HRC that Christopher Smith mentioned on Wednesday. And there are 31 projects across the country that have been supported. Quite a few of those are really scientific lab facilities that are being supported, and then there are a number of collections-based projects that are being supported, and we are one of those. So we're one of a handful of collections-based projects rather than labs, and we have partnered with National Museums Liverpool on our project as well. It was really important to show that partnership with other cultural organisations in the city. Really, it was QR funding, that funding for our infrastructure, that made us ready to be able to apply for that project. Without it, we wouldn't have been able to demonstrate the capabilities to be able to deliver. So our project is an interface between archives, photography, archaeological museum finds, and research data. And it's about physical improvements for our collection storage and research access facilities, but it's also a really major digital reunification project about a collection, the Garstang collection, which is actually distributed in over 100 institutions worldwide. Most of the objects are in the University of Liverpool and National Museums Liverpool. I'll give you a very little bit of context about John Garstang. I could talk about it for a long time. But John Garstang was an archaeologist, and he excavated in Egypt, Sudan, Palestine, Turkey, and he used photography in his process. He was a very early adopter of photography, and we have thousands of images of the excavations as they were happening alongside his notebooks and other records. So we've got archives that are talking about the finds. We've got photographs of the actual excavations happening. And then we've got the objects themselves. But then that distribution, because John Garstang was sponsored in his excavations, and his sponsors, in return for their favours, were given fines. So that's why the collection has been distributed across the world. And archaeological collections are research significant when they are complete. And so digital reunification is really the only way to make this a genuinely important and accessible research resource. So our project is intended to raise the accessibility, visibility and usability of the collection. Simplifying research. We're supporting small museums who don't have expertise to identify objects, and we're working with countries of origin and to help them, to give them equality of access. And we're going to be producing our site in English and Arabic. I'm afraid I'm going to end up not being in time with this countdown, so forgive me. I'll move on to my last slide. I wanted to talk quickly about being research communicators. So we've done a lot about our digital infrastructure, but some of you will have seen the VGM museum galleries last night. We have very popular exhibitions, been dominated by art collections since 2020 when our museum in the building closed. But we're really thinking about what do we want the VGM to be now, how do we want it to be understood, how do we want our users to engage in it, how do we want it to intersect with the wider cultural landscape of the city, and what does the university want from a museum? So we've done a lot of work to set our vision out for the VGM. We want the VGM to be a place of conversation, to create a buzz throughout the building. We want different interactions to be taking place. We want to be prompting conversation, inspiring new thinking. We want to be a gateway for the university with the potential for new collaborations and relationships running throughout our offer. And we want to be a place of experimentation and creativity and innovation. So we've been thinking about the collections a lot in this. They're diverse and eclectic. But our museum historically has been a bit of a homage to the university. You know, do people really want to hear about the universities first and all of our success? Maybe not. So we want to be story-led, not object-led. We want to recognise unheard voices. We want our neighbourhood communities to feel welcome and that they belong. And we want to support contemporary storytelling as well. So how do we go beyond our collections? How do we diversify social learning? How do we ensure our relevance to research, culture and environment? So Tate Hall, just a few of you might have managed to see that last night, is our opportunity. It's our closed museum that we will be reopening in September. And we are testing new participatory methods of engagement, really learning as a team about different ways to interact with our visitor. We're thinking about our collections as one. We don't have museum collections, archives, special collections. They are one collection that speak to each other. And we're working with our researchers from the initial concept of an exhibition. So it's not that they come along with an exhibition idea at a later date and hope that we've got a space for them. They are part of that journey with us. They're part of coming up with that thematic approach to storytelling. And learning, engagement and evaluation have been key from the very start. So quickly, our Lightbulb Moments is our new exhibition which will open in September this year. And I'll just finish with our strapline, that great ideas don't come from nowhere, plenty of them come from Liverpool. Thank you.
Henry Rousel from LSE Library. It's a question mainly for Leeds and Liverpool colleagues on the digital scholarship collaborations you've been doing. I'm thinking mainly about the internships at Leeds and the makerspace at Liverpool. Could you share any advice on any engagement activities that you did to get potentially interested people, students and researchers through the door?
Thanks. Yeah, I think one of the first things that we recognised was that there was some scepticism and a little bit of fear from colleagues about digital things, particularly about things that might involve coding or those sorts of skills. So it was really about doing showcase work about what's possible. So the tools themselves are just tools. And a lot of the stuff that we do is actually just making sure that people are using the right tools in the right way. But the tools are secondary. It's really the research questions and the inquiry that comes first, which is what the students have, and they're completely fearless about it, and they're not frightened of technologies that they might have to learn subsequently to do things. So it's really about showcasing what's possible, what you can do with certain types of approaches, and what the benefits of those things are. And the university, like Liverpool, we've got several makerspaces on campus, and the library has one in the Upper Boyle Library as well, which are really good points of access for people to come in and try things out, both analog and digital things as well. So our makerspaces also have things like sewing in it and Lego and lots of things like that people can come in and play, and then that leads to other things. So that's really sort of showing by example, really.
Yeah, our technician wouldn't let me get a sewing machine. So. Yeah, we've been working with students a lot in the makerspace, and we employ student partners. So they really bring a different perspective to it, and it's making the makerspace has been important to us in terms of that equity of access, and that some departments have access to all of this type of equipment in their department as part of their studies, but actually there's a lot of students that could benefit from it that don't have that same access. So it's really been opening it up to people in different disciplines, and just watching the students. I mean, one of the students spoke to the VC very recently about the experience, and it was so far away from her usual studies, but she was really able to demonstrate the benefits of it. And we've been using it as a space for proof of concept as well, for academics as well, technicians that, again, might not have that access to equipment, for them to, trial and error, try again with different ways that they can think about sustainability agenda and lots of different things. It's just, we've really framed it as experimental.
Just add to that in terms of the research infrastructure pieces, one of the arguments that we made around the makerspace was economies of scale and a reduction in duplication of purchasing equipment. We see significant volumes of VR headsets and 3D printers and scanners being bought as a part of research projects, which when the project ends, they sit redundant in a department. And the idea that the library will be a home for this and can be a part of that research infrastructure to prevent or removes the requirement for academics to purchase that equipment themselves. I think the other thing I just mentioned briefly, we often talk about libraries as laboratories, and we've used the makerspace as a part of that narrative that we want both the makerspace and also the library to be the safest space in the university for student failure. This is where they should come and be able to make mistakes and challenge their ways of thinking. And the makerspace has been just a really visible way of presenting that to maybe colleagues who hadn't traditionally thought of a library in that way.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. We have a question over here.
Thank you. Catherine Dack, University of Bristol. This is a question for Simon, and it is just a very specific question, I'm afraid. I'm very impressed that your student interns managed to build a 3D scanner that could deal with reflective surfaces out of a biscuit tin. Have they shared their method anywhere of how they did that?
Yes, and they're two of them are actually trying to set up companies at the moment. So we've got hopefully two student startups coming out of it. So yes, so apply to me in writing, and I'll put you in touch.
It'd be interesting to know if it needs to be a specific type of biscuit. Yes, there's a question over there.
Thank you. Katie Fraser, Research Consulting. And this question is really to anyone on the panel who would like to answer it. I attended the session yesterday on libraries as community research partners, and we were talking about the outputs of projects, and partly the output being what you kind of learned about yourself and about your own organisations in the process of undertaking it. And I wonder if you had any reflections to share on what you'd learned about yourselves as individuals, but also as kind of libraries in undertaking this process. Sorry, that was a big question for a Friday afternoon.
A deeply reflective question for a Friday afternoon, but Claire, go ahead.
So I know I'm quite nosy and like to find out about things and love working with people who are passionate, but it just reinforces that when you're working with academic partners and having really in-depth conversations, and with our interns as well. It's just great listening to them and learning from them and going back to that sponge mentality. And I think, I'm not sure if Michelle's here earlier, but, you know, that curiosity and going in and asking questions. And that's why I love working in libraries and why I love working in HE, is having that. So I think, I don't know if I learned anything new, but that definitely reinforced that. I think one of the things about the institution, and I don't know how similar this is for others, is, and Masood alluded to this earlier, that it's quite difficult for us in the library to hold research money. And that's part of, I think, the change that we need to be leading and be co-Is, etc., and PIs with projects. And this is something that we've found, is that working across a service and a faculty, where the money goes, can change what you can do with that money, because research projects at Leeds have to be sat within the faculties. So I think there's things like that that are structural that we need to address and we need to ask, and I think that's part of the research culture work that's going on across UK HE as well.
I think I'd really focus in on the relationships, and I'd do a shout out for our APVC for research culture, actually, who's been very supportive of us and has believed that we'd be able to deliver, believed that libraries are research infrastructure, and wants to change that message across the institution as well. So I think that's been really, really important to us, and just continuing with that relationship building.
I was just going to say one thing from, I suppose, from an academic perspective, is that traditionally lots of people, not me, but lots of people see libraries as almost service institutes. That this is where some of the material is. Here are people can do it. But libraries haven't always been places where research is initiated and driven from. And I think that's what's changing now. And that's what's really exciting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more from the room? I had a question for regarding the trainer model, and I wonder if you had any plans to expand it out beyond the CIVICA partnership, because it seems like there were many other institutions who would benefit who are not part of the CIVICA grouping.
Not at this time, but the INOSC model that we kind of borrowed or adopted, that's free for anybody to use. So, and I think they run incubator programs a couple of times a year, so anybody can do it. And across Europe, I mean, CIVIC is one alliance, but apparently there are over 40 alliances. And we met with one of them who were doing exactly the same thing that we were, and doing train the trainer programs to encourage people to start communities and bring that model in to engage their researchers better.
Okay. Useful to know, thank you. I pause just to one last look around the room. I don't see any more hands. So in that case, I'd like to draw the session to a close. This idea of libraries as partners in research and as creators of research is something that we're very passionately interested in within RLUK. It's been mentioned a couple of times. We've worked a lot with the AHRC around the Catalyst programme to raise capacity within libraries to take on research, and also the fellowship programme with the HRC. So that's something that's very important to us, and that's why this panel has been so important to us. So really very, very grateful to Lucy, to Jason, to Matt, Joanne, and to Claire, and to Simon. So